Welcome to the Columbia Journalism Review. My name is Josh. I'm an editor at CJR, and I'm so lucky and fortunate to be joined by these three very accomplished and I would say brave journalists who are here in New York with us, and we're very privileged. We're here to have a discussion about journalism in dangerous and difficult situations, something that I think for a lot of American journalists feels like maybe it's creeping ever closer to our lives. We have a sense that corporations, which maybe were never our friends, really don't like us. They certainly keep firing us. We are seeing billionaires who will use their money and power to enlist private detectives to go after journalists and go after news outlets and shut them down at times. And of course, we have a presidential candidate and former president who has spent the better part of the last several years calling us the enemy of the people. So who better to help us work through, how do you exist in this space, and how do you work in places where the freedom to do your job feels like it's getting smaller than three people who have done it in quite different circumstances.
My name is Fatima Faizi. Before fall of Kabul, I was working for the Times, but in August 2021, when the Taliban took over Afghanistan, I came to the US, and right now, as we speak, there is no independent media in Afghanistan. The national TV is under control of the Taliban. Most media outlets shut down their doors because they no longer can survive. Women are not allowed to do their jobs. There are only 450 female media workers across the country. Women in Papra are not allowed to work, and also basically journalists in Afghanistan who are still working, before running their stories, they have to check it with the Taliban authorities if the story is appropriate. And in some instance, if you're a journalist and you're a TV journalist, you're sitting here to present your program, and there are two gunmen standing right in front of you and keeping you on check that you will not say something. And then that's how the media operates in Afghanistan. They are under so much pressure. And unfortunately, after fall of Kabul, more than 80% of journalists whether lost their jobs, or they had to leave the country.
Stanislav Kucher, a Russian, now American journalist with almost 30 years of work for different Russian media outlets as a political commentator. And I had to leave Russia back in early 2019 because there were no longer journalistic opportunities for me there. I've been on the Kremlin's blacklist since 2004, I guess. Right now, there's hardly any journalism left in Russia. It's all propaganda, because literally all remaining functioning media outlets belong to the government. Most journalists have left Russia. So again, right now I cannot refer to my former fellow journalists in Russia as journalists. And that's probably the saddest thing about the moment.
I'm Anisha Dutta. I'm an Indian journalist who's now based in New York. I came to New York 2 years ago. I've covered politics, national Indian politics, since the past 10 years. And what's happening in India, the media is going through a huge crisis. As he was mentioning, he can't refer to his colleagues as journalists anymore. It's sort of similar in India, where the media has been complicit in becoming very easily propaganda mouthpieces. The media in India right now is split into two parts, as you can say. The television media, which is completely either run indirectly by the government or owned by businessmen who are favorable with the government, and independent news media is struggling to even survive.
Looking back over the last few years, or the years leading up to your decision to leave, was there a moment? Was there a series of moments? Was it a more gradual sort of period of change that made it clear to you?
For me, it was more gradual. What's happening politically in India is not something that has happened overnight. In the first term of the Modi government, we saw that the media, which is, I think the best example I can give is Fox News. We saw the Fox Newsification, so to speak, of Indian TV media. And where we have a prime minister who says, okay, I don't need the press needs me, has not given a single press conference, the first prime minister in the history of independent India who has not spoken to the press freely. That gives the message that, access will be controlled. Either you toe the government line or we are going to make sure that there will be action. In India, there are very stringent actions taken against them. Over the past few years, NewsClick, an organization, an independent news media organization's office has been raided. The Caravan, which is again an independent news media organization's office, has also been raided. The Wire is facing similar charges. And then, of course, there's also an environment where the government passes legislations. For example, it's changed its IT Act to ensure that the federal government has powers to take down anything on the internet. Every news website now is on the internet, right? I mean, even the print. Our stories go online before us. So there's an environment now where reporting, especially for the print, has it's really curbed to a point that either you seek foreign outlets or you decide to leave.
There are a lot of freedoms that Americans are taking for granted. And a lot of American journalists believe that, well, nothing can happen to us. We are well insured against any kind of authoritarianism.
Yeah.
Well, again, my story, the story of my country, the story of journalism in my country proves that everything is possible. I had my own political show on national television when I was 24. When I was 26, my show got shut down. When I was 30, I was on the blacklist, not allowed to work anywhere for national television. So ever since that time, and that was 20 years ago already, I've been working for different media outlets. I would go and work for a radio station, and then either that radio station would get shut down or its owner would get a phone call from the president's office saying, get rid of that guy. And they would just have no choice but to get rid of me. Yeah. So I've worked for print media, radio stations, online media, and I left after I was editor-in-chief of the Snob magazine, online magazine in Russia in 2018, because the owner of the magazine got a phone call saying you're not getting any advertising in the next year if you keep that editor-in-chief.
Your experience of leaving, I think it was sort of made for you, that decision. So it's not quite the same question of the sequence of events. But I was struck in reading, you wrote about it really eloquently, and I was struck by, you were talking about a laptop that you were trying to protect.
August 15th in the morning, we had a meeting about where to go. And then it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was a Sunday. And then on Tuesday, we were supposed to go to Ukraine because the Times was planning to take us to Ukraine. And by noon, everything come to light that it's not, there will be no Tuesday to leave, then we have to. And then I had to go and pack. And the one thing that I still cannot somehow understand, how can you pack your entire life in a backpack? But the one thing that I wanted to protect more than anything else and more than my own life was the laptop, because we had names, phone numbers, addresses, and everything was in the laptop because we were talking to Afghan security forces and about casualty of Afghan security forces. And there were like so many names and phone numbers that was easy for the Taliban to identify them. And I was thinking that if anybody can access to this laptop, these people will be dead. So I know some journalists that they couldn't get out of the country and they were forced to marry their relatives because the families were scared that the Taliban might come and get these girls. Women who were protesting on the streets, they were also jailed. And yesterday, 2 women just, according to the Taliban, they were jailed to prison just for protesting, nothing else. And then as a woman, if you are getting out of your house and you're protesting, that is considered spying for foreign nations.
All of you have described in different ways these extraordinarily difficult circumstances. Let me ask a question that may sound dumb, but why keep going?
I think there's a very David versus Goliath nature to what we've been doing. And there's one Indian journalist, Ravi, who lost his job because NDTV, which was one of the biggest television news organizations in India, was taken over by a billionaire who's known for friendly ties with the Prime Minister. Now he's moved to YouTube. He said one thing which resonated with me a lot. He said, not every battle is there to be won. Some battles need to happen so that history remembers that there was someone on the field, that there was some opposition, that there was someone chronicling it. And I think as journalists, that's our job. There's a reason that we chose this profession. It's not the perks, it's not the money. It's a calling, right? And you don't know anything else that you want to do.
And if we stop telling the truth about what's going on in Afghanistan, in India, in Russia, if we stop explaining this to the people, not only in our countries, but elsewhere in the world, including in the United States, then the risks of the world turning Putinist just becomes one hell of a lot bigger. And this is again about our survival. This is about our self-preservation. I don't want my kids, my grandkids to live and grow up in the world which will be more like Stalinist Soviet Union, 100 years ago, or like today's Afghanistan. No, that's not the kind of world I want them to live in.
It is our job and duty to inform the world about what is going on in Afghanistan or what is going on in Russia or in Iran or anywhere in the world. To not remain silent, because it's about the sacrifices. On the other hand is that when personally believe that for 20 years from now, if the world says, oh, there was an ongoing gender apartheid in Afghanistan and we didn't know that, or we didn't pay attention, or there was a lot of things going on in the world that we couldn't pay attention, at least we have those stories and we were like, okay, we tried to tell you, but you didn't listen. So also that is part of, I think, our reasons that my colleagues or people, my friends, that they still keep going and they're still doing the job, not because of the money that we make, because it's nothing, right? Journalists barely can make any money. It's just because of the duty and because of the responsibilities and also obligations.
There's a little bit of a tension there between this idea that journalists should see themselves as a kind of vanguard against these dictatorial impulses you might see in your government. But at the same time, you're saying there's also a danger in going too far in that direction. And I think maybe you could argue with the Washington Post saying democracy dies in darkness on the top of their front page. CNN turning themselves partially into a fact-checking machine of Donald Trump. If you turn yourself into that antagonist, then you risk increasing the polarization and diluting the trust.
When you said that CNN is turning into a fact-checking machine for Donald Trump, the good thing is just a week ago, CNN posted this article fact-checking Joe Biden's statements and found like 3 false statements that Joe Biden made. And that was a great job.
Yeah.
So I just suggest they keep on in the same groove, They should be, all journalists should be a fact-checking machine, not only for Trump or anyone, but for everyone.
Yeah. I think what I mean by that, and I was being a little glib, but I think what I mean is that if you see your job as being in opposition to these forces that are so intense and frankly directly against journalism, if you think your job is to fight back, you have there's a potential downside.
You can only fight back by telling the truth.
The public will ignore you. The public will lose trust.
But journalism by nature is anti-establishment. That is the main job. So, that has to be done. There's no 2 or 4 in that argument. Whoever is in power has to be fact-checked.
One of the most crucial things is the professional behavior, the professional conduct of journalists in this country. And when I say this, I don't necessarily mean journalists, in quotes, like Tucker Carlson, those who are actually agitators, propagandists. I mean, he's been a member of the Republican Party since 2020, right? No, not only that side of the barricade, but I also mean journalists who are called liberal journalists in this country. And I'll explain why. I have a friend, unfortunately, I cannot mention his name because he did not authorize me to, but he is a very well-known American journalist who has worked in American media for the past 40 years. He's worked for a major New York radio station. And he, in 2016, told me, like, you know, Stas, first time in my life, I'm going to cheat on my journalistic duty and take a side. Because I believe Donald Trump is a threat to the Republic. And so then we later spoke in 2020, and he said, yeah, me and a lot of other journalists, we kind of cheated on our job because we took a side. And I don't believe this is right, he said, because now I can see that too many people, especially on Trump's side, no longer believe in the objectivity of journalists.
Respect your audience. Have respect for your audience and tell the truth. It doesn't matter how hard it is. It doesn't matter if people attack you, and you have to tell the truth. And I don't know also the thin line between journalism and also opinion, I think, has been crossed in America. And then it's hard to sometimes to differentiate whether it's a piece of opinion or it's a journalistic reporting. So I think don't go with public opinion. Do your job. Report the truth and have respect for your audience, not just because when it comes to American media, it's not just American audience. It's like the global audience. Have respect for them.
Thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for
And bring
having me.
Walter Cronkite back.